Welcome to Stop the Fight, episode 25. And today we have a jam-packed episode from cancellations to the big fights this week.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy. Just.
All right, let's talk about the big news this week. The Spence Manny Pacquiao fight that was supposed to happen on August the 21st next weekend is now over. It's done. It's canceled. Yeah, disappointing. So what happened here? Spence apparently has a detached retina. And he said he went to a bunch of doctors and guys, you can't fight with a detached retina in your eye. You will go blind. Yes, it's really unfortunate. This is boxing having a bad run. 3 months, 3 big fights, 3 months, and maybe it's more than 3 months, but it seems like every month over the past few months we've had a big fight being canceled, and this is another one. Spence Pacquiao, man, this was a huge fight for Manny. It was a huge fight for Spence too, but for Manny Pacquiao, I said it in many episodes leading up how this was going to be kind of like a fight that could potentially put him in the top 5 of all time. And we don't get that. It's unfortunate. We hope that Spence heals. We hope that Spence is able to come back, and I hope that he can, he makes a full recovery. First and foremost, Spence is one of our up-and-coming kind of attractions in the sport, a champion, one of the best pound-for-pound fighters, and we really want him to get the surgery, get his retina healed, and hopefully come back and fight Pacquiao. In the meantime, we have Ugas stepping in to fight Manny Pacquiao. This is really not the worst option. This is something I think that most of us will find reasonable for Pacquiao. Things could have been way worse. Maybe the whole fight could have been canceled, the whole fight card. Now, let's talk about Ugas a little bit. He's 26-4 with 12 knockouts. 35-year-old. He's been around the block. That's without question. He's a Cuban. He's lost to Sean Porter recently. Obviously, was defeated by Johnny Garcia, Amir Imam, and Emmanuel Robles. So this is really a pretty decent step up, I will tell you guys, because he did give Sean Porter a very reasonable fight only a few years ago. He also wound up being Omar Figueroa Jr. and Mike Dallas. And recently he has a victory over Abel Ramos. But it was really the victories over the undefeated Figueroa and the close fights with Sean Porter that show us, if we've watched them, is that Ugas is a reasonable opponent to step in and fight Manny Pacquiao. And I guess, all things considered, when Manny Pacquiao training for Spence, Ugas brings a different kind of fight. Spence is a puncher, a kind of medium range puncher, versus Ugas, he's a boxer. He's a straight up boxer, and this is going to be a slightly different dynamic that Manny Pacquiao has to face. Now, I do, of course, think Manny Pacquiao will win, but this is a reasonable foe. Okay, now that that's over, let's talk about this weekend. And we have a lot of fights this weekend. Let's start with Virgil Ortiz. Now, Virgil Ortiz is, I've talked about him many times before. We talked about his fight against Maurice Hooker. He got Hooker out of there in 7 rounds. Looked great. Just absolutely kind of walked through Hooker. And Virgil Ortiz, to those who don't know, if it's your first time listening, he's 23 years old with 17-0 with 17 knockouts. Nobody has made it through the 12 rounds or any. No one has made it to the completion of the fight against Virgil Ortiz. He's a very stout fighter at 5'10". At welterweight, this is a very, very, very strong fighter. Guys, 5'10", 23 years old. I don't even know how long he can stay at welterweight because he looks thick at this weight class. He is fighting Kavaliauskas, right? Am I get that? Kavaliauskas. Kavaliauskas, there we go. Who himself was a pretty good fighter. We may remember Kavaliauskas from his fight against Terrence Crawford. He actually gave a very spirited effort in getting knocked out by Crawford. I think he hurt Crawford and actually knocked him down. I think I'm almost 100% sure that Crawford at one point touched the canvas, his glove touched the canvas, but it wasn't ruled as such. He hurt Crawford a couple of times, really stunned him. This guy's here to fight. I wish I can pronounce his name right. Kavaliauskas. So, yeah, so he is going up against Vergil Ortiz, and I actually think this is a pretty good fight. I think Vergil Ortiz absolutely wins simply because of the nature of the style of fight. So the last thing you want to do as a slightly smaller guy, and Kavaliauskas is going to be smaller, is get into a shootout, which is what he wants to do, as you saw with Terrence Crawford, against a bigger, stronger, better puncher. It's almost a recipe for disaster. We saw last week with the Dickens fight against Galahad. If you are fighting like a replica style, but you're a little bit worse in every aspect, you're going to in for a long night. And in this case, I think Kavaliauskas is in for a short night. If he's going to try and come fight him, Vergil Ortiz, that is. He's going to try and fight Vergil Ortiz. But I do not think that is what you want to do, especially if you're a smaller guy. You know, Vergil Ortiz's skills of getting that man strength. At 23 years old, he's still maturing physically. He's only going to get a little stronger, and he has shown at the championship level against Hooker, and even against Vargas, to carry that power. So I believe that Kavaliauskas is in for a short night, especially because again we saw Crawford, who is a respectable puncher, but not particularly anything to write home about. Get Kavaliauskas out of there in 9 rounds, knocking him down a few times along the way. So again, I think this is a great time to. It should be a great showcase fight. I think also, you know, with Ortiz, it'll be interesting to see how he's maturing defensively because, as I mentioned, he did great against Hooker, but there were a little bit of areas in his defense which can be exploited. Now, again, all heavy punchers, guys who get people out of there, guys who are 17-0 with 17 knockouts, they all have a little bit of defensive deficiencies. It comes with the game. You know, it's like saying, oh, well, Mayweather doesn't have, you know, Mayweather's offense has some deficiencies. Well, it comes with the game of being a defensive first fighter. You know, it's impossible to be the total package. If you are a superb offensive fighter, chances are you're giving up a little bit defensively. And it's how much you give up defensively tells us how good you can be. So I think early on we should see some exciting action in the first 4 or 5 rounds. Let's talk about a little bit of the odds that we got going on for this fight to those that want to maybe game the casino a little bit. All right, so on DraftKings, we have Vergil Ortiz going at minus 1,600, meaning you got to bet $1,600 to win 100, and Kavaliauskas going at plus 850 means if you bet 100 and he wins, you get $850. Well, like I said, this is a little bit like the Dickens fight from last week, Dickens-Galahad fight. I just think Kavaliauskas is a little bit worse in every aspect that he excels in than Ortiz. So I don't really see Kavaliauskas winning. Can anything happen? It's boxing, of course. But I don't think it's even worth taking him. But if you look at the over-under 6.5 is at minus 120, and the under 6.5 is a plus 100. I like the under 6.5 here. I believe that Kavaliauskas is coming here to fight. He is going to come at Vergil Ortiz, and I think that in turn is probably going to end the night earlier. So I believe that the under 6.5 at even money is what we're looking for here, personally. It's, you bet 100, you win 100. And that's if you're betting, and I have a long parlay, so I don't have any, I just took Vergil Ortiz outright. But over here, I think the under 6.5 is where it's at if you're betting just on this fight. Okay, let's move on. We have a lot to talk about. We have Rigondeaux against John Casimero. Now, Casimero, if you remember, was supposed to fight Donaire before things fell apart, and the winner was going to get the monster Inoue. Well, you know, Donaire didn't like the way Casimero was talking, and he pulled out of the fight. Rigondeaux steps in. And this right here, guys, is interesting because what I'm seeing from people, and what I'm reading online is everyone is just willing to write Rigondeaux off. And I think people are insane, to tell you the truth. Yes, he's aged. Yes, he took a little bit of damage in his previous fight, and he didn't look all that hot against Solis. But, guys, you never know when Rigondeaux can turn it up like that. He's a two-time Olympian. His only defeat came against Lomachenko. And at a weight class that he shouldn't fight at. So here he is, still at badminton, fighting against Casimero, who's 30-4 with 21 knockouts and 1 defeat coming by way of knockout. And as we've seen with Casimero, he can be outboxed. He can be stopped and he can be outboxed. And for me personally, you know, it was only like 4 years ago that he was outboxed by Jonas Sultan. And for many of you guys asking, yes, that's literally who. Literally who was outboxing Casimero. And you want me to believe that Rigondeaux, potentially one of the best pure boxers ever, is not going to outbox him? Guys, I'm telling you right now, when I think if I'm not mistaken, Rigondeaux was going at plus like 125, plus 170. Please, guys. I mean, this is one of those fights where I think there's almost no way. I can't imagine it. I can't imagine Rigondeaux losing here. You know, Casimero's not bigger. He's going to get boxed from the outside for the entire time. I don't care if Rigondeaux's really 52 years old. You know, everyone says the Cubans are a little bit older than they are. But there's no way in hell I am betting against Rigondeaux when he's fighting a smaller guy who is shown to be vulnerable to boxers. No way. This is one of those things where I think the casinos are really kind of, I think they're wrong. I just think they're straight up wrong. I don't think this fight is going to be particularly close. I expect a clear decision for Rigondeaux here. Maybe even a KO. Well, not really. I'm not going to say a KO. But Rigondeaux's, guys, when Rigondeaux is long, if you remember why he lost Lomachenko was a bigger, faster guy who does things almost as well as Rigondeaux does. Again, a good big guy is going to beat a good small guy. Where over here, Rigondeaux gave up massive height to Lomachenko, massive size to Lomachenko. Over here, this is not the case. Rigondeaux is going to be 3 inches bigger than Casimero. Guys, please. What are the casinos talking about here? Plus 170? I'm sorry. But this is where, for me personally, this is worth a little bit more than beer money. I mean, obviously, I straddle and have a long parlay going. This night, I just believe that I'm very confident in the Rigondeaux pick here. I really think he's going to outbox Casimero, who himself is not, you know, everyone's saying, oh, Rigondeaux's old, but 32 at badminton weight isn't particularly a spring chicken either. We've seen Lomachenko slow down and a couple of weight classes higher. These guys are aging even faster at these lower weight classes. And don't look to Donaire, because Donaire is not the same Donaire from 5-6 years ago either, regardless of how good he's looked. You know, even in his previous fight, Donaire was also kind of hurt a few times in between. If you look at his face, he's marked up a little bit, even though he knocked the other guy down 3 times and stopped him. And I said the physics were bad over here. Well, I think the physics are a little bit wrong here as well. Another thing is Rigondeaux is a southpaw, a long, rangy southpaw against a shorter orthodox fighter who can be outboxed. Guys, I'm sorry, but the casinos giving you Rigondeaux a plus 170. This is no way. There's no way in hell you can convince me to put money on Casimero. I'm not even hedging this. This is a straight Rigondeaux pick. Straight Rigondeaux pick. I don't know if he outboxes him or if he stops him, but I believe he wins this fight. He wins this fight. Well, maybe I'll be eating crow in a few days, but that's just my take. All right, let's keep moving because, like I said, big weekend. We have a matchroom card, and on the matchroom card, we have the undefeated Joshua Buatsi. He's the 14-0 with 12 knockouts, light heavyweight. And here he is. He's London-based from Ghana. Here he is fighting against Ricards Bolotniks from Latvia, who is 18-5-1 with 8 wins coming by way of knockout, and of his 5 defeats, 3 were by way of knockout. Now, in this fight, I believe this is a no-brainer. I believe that you're gonna have Buatsi, who's looked pretty damn good. I think he's gonna walk through Bolotnik. So for us betters, you know, what are we looking at here in terms of the odds straight up? Joshua Buatsi at minus 1,000 and Bolotniks at plus 600. I don't think Bolotniks has any chance to win here. Bolotniks has been stopped numerous times. You know, he's brought in to fight other Eastern Europeans. If you look at his record, he's got very many guys from Eastern Europe. You know, most of his fights came in Riga, in Latvia, and recently he's had a few fights here in England. He beat Serge Mitchell by knockout, by TKO in the 10th round in his previous fight. Now, I think that Buatsi is the real deal. He's going to be a little bit bigger, and he's a very strong guy. So what I like in this fight, if you look at the over-under, I like the under 6.5 rounds over here at minus 110. Both the over and the under 6.5 are minus 110. Means you got to bet $110 to win 100. This is all part of my really long parlay that I think I got over here. Now, like I said, Buatsi is a very strong, tall, powerful light heavy. I think he potentially could even move up to cruiserweight, depending on what happens. But I think for light heavyweight, he's a very strong guy. And I just think Bolotniks is kind of brought in to make Buatsi look good. And I think we're going to see a knockout. I think it's going to happen in the mid rounds. Obviously, I'm betting that it happens before the minute and 30-second mark in the 7th round at under 6.5. But again, we'll see. It's all part of my long parlay play. Yes. All right. So Gary Antonio Russell, not the other Gary Russell. Gary Antonio Russell is fighting Emmanuel Rodriguez as well on the undercard of the Virgil Ortiz fight. Of the Ortiz card. Yes. Right. No. On the undercard of the Guillermo Rigondeaux fight, Casimero fight. And he's fighting against Emmanuel Rodriguez. And I think this is a pretty good fight here. I expect Gary Russell to win, but this is going to be a little bit of a test. You know, Emmanuel Rodriguez came off a knockout loss to Inoue and then a split decision, but competitive fight against Gaballo. And I think this is a good test for Gary Antonio Russell. And this is going to propel him one step closer to getting to Inoue. One step closer. And this is one of those fights that I think he has to look good in. If he doesn't look good, then, you know, we can forget about any Inoue fight in the future or even a Donaire fight. So he has to look good here. Russell has to look good. Because, like I said, sometimes fighters are brought in. I think in this case, Emmanuel's brought in to kind of test where Russell's at. Can he fight Inoue? Because he's got to get rid of Russell. He's got to look good against him for us to be convinced that he's got any shot against Inoue. And Inoue right now is the top 3, top 5 pound-for-pound guy. He's been just demolishing people. Monster is a proper nickname for him. And let's just talk about this weekend in general. I mean, it's one of those weekends where I just put on boxing on Saturday in the afternoon in the Zone because I think, is Matchroom not the Zone anymore? I think Matchroom may have... No, I think it's the Zone. And you kind of leave it on for the whole day, starting at around 2 p.m. We have fights on Showtime, on Fox, on ESPN. There's an Austin Trout is fighting. I mean, this is like, and I love it because I'll set it up on my TV, on my desktop, on my laptop, and you'll have fights everywhere. And I love that because I love the sport. I'll watch it all the time. I'll watch bad cards, good cards, exciting cards, foreign cards, local cards. If there's some boxing on, I'll always put it on in the background, even if I'm not actively watching. It's just something about the sport and these kind of weekends when you have so many fights to look forward to. You know, and really that Guillermo Rigondeaux Casimero fight for me is the fight of the weekend. That's what I really want to see. Obviously, the Buatsi fight, obviously the Virgil Ortiz fight. They're all exciting as well. But the Guillermo Rigondeaux fight is the one that I'm there to see personally because I truly believe that Rigondeaux he kind of, I don't want to say threw away his career. You know, we're going to talk about Rigondeaux probably the rest of the way. So if you want to hear about Rigondeaux, then stay tuned. But if you're done, have a good weekend. We'll see you on a Sunday. So Rigondeaux is possibly the best Olympian ever, or right in there in discussion. And that was one of the selling points with him and Lomachenko, and why everyone always wanted that fight, is that you had these two guys, each with 2 Olympic gold medals, each with claims to be the greatest amateur ever, each with, rising kind of pro credit and stuff like that. You had Rigondeaux really, no one's done to Donaire what he did to Donaire, right? He really put the boxing on him. That fight wasn't close, was it? Yeah, Donaire did well. He did well in the fight, but he really, he really got outboxed at points quite heavily. And to many people actually believe that was the beginning of the end for Donaire. Now, obviously, Donaire has obviously had a resurgence in his career, but Rigondeaux, since beating Donaire, kind of like, it's like, whoa. But then he kind of fought nobody since. He's looked dominant, yes, but he's looked like against who? Adrian Francisco? Hisashi? Who has he looked dominant against? And people always wanted more from him. And eventually he goes and he steps up in what seemed to be like a pretty bad move to step up and go against Lomachenko, 2 weight classes up, and he just got dominated. He wasn't even in that fight. Lomachenko was just jabbing his face off, in, out. He was faster, better footwork, And Rigondeaux was a little bit embarrassed. He really was. And then since that point, he's kind of had, he got hit, especially against Julio Cea. He got kind of hit a lot. And then he's engaging in in a difficult fight with Solis, and you're wondering, is this the end for Rigondeaux? And what did he really accomplish? He's got the Donaire win, but what else? And you kind of feel for a fighter like Rigondeaux, because I've said this before, and if something happens to a lot of these Cuban greats when they come to America, they don't pan out the same way in the pros. Cuban amateurs, for all their accolades, they're not a distinguishable group in the pros. Not distinguished, I should say. They don't have those kind of legendary champions. Not at heavyweight, not at anything. And Rigondeaux, after beating Donaire, looked like he was going to be the one that breaks that spell. But like I said, he kind of didn't really fight anybody. He fights Donaire in 2013, goes fights Abeko, beats him. Yotan, and then he kind of has 3 fights over the next 4 years. That's a really low level of activity. And now, if you look at Rigondeaux, he looks like, people say, he's however old he is, and people always say, well, Cuban fighters lie in their birth certificate, and Rigondeaux does look old in the face. The jackal. He does look old in the face. And you wonder, how much time does he even have left? Because he's clearly been slowing down these past few fights. How much time does Rigondeaux have left in the sport to make a name? Can he even do it? This is what a lot of people, I think, either overlook or don't take seriously, but age is the thing. Guys, age is a thing. You see it with Mayweather. Age is a thing. Eventually, everybody is too old to fight. So, like I said, I think Rigondeaux is going to take it. I think Rigondeaux is one of the most talented fighters to lace him up. It just, something happened, man. Something happens with these Cuban fighters. Maybe it is the freedom. Maybe with nobody breathing down your neck, you kind of treat things differently. It's, I don't know. But like I said, I'm going to root for him. I believe he's going to win this fight. I believe he wins this fight handedly. And it should be a good one. Now, let's talk about this is the Oscar De La Hoya comeback fight. The card is getting filled in. So, obviously, De La Hoya is fighting Victor Belfort, MMA guy. And also, you're going to have Anderson Silva against Ortiz, Tito Ortiz, in a boxing match on the undercard. And that's kind of interesting. I like when I've said this before in many episodes, and I'll say it again. I like when fighters have a chance to make some more money. You don't need to come out there and getting kicked in the head in MMA. If you can do some boxing, put on the bigger gloves. I doubt these guys can really hurt each other at their age too much. And I think this is great. Anderson Silva was like the Roy Jones of his time in MMA. Doing things in the ring, making people look like they don't belong in the ring, who are good, sizable fighters. So again, and after beating, oh my God, Junior, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., and getting rid of him for us, every time, I will tell you, he's quit so many times and had so many excuses that watching Anderson Silva, a non-boxer, beat Chavez Jr. was really just like a nice dessert. All right, guys, so that's gonna do it for me. I hope you guys enjoy this weekend. It should be good fights, should be interesting. You should have a lot of fun. Good luck if you're betting. Again, none of this was financial advice. Please, you're all grown people. You make your own decisions. You make your own bets. I'll see you guys on a Sunday or a Monday. It's over.
I'm gonna go home and break my wife's hip.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy. Just.